Grace and peace to you, brothers and sisters. Today I am on a stand-up paddleboard, kayaking over to Masonboro Island, and right now I'm in this beautiful bay. It's really big, it's also really shallow. This is peak high tide, so it's really big and you can explore a lot here, but at low tide, it empties out completely. It's pretty remarkable. It's a great place to explore at low tide. But this is the time to go. When you want to go to Masonboro, you go when it's early in the morning and the sun is rising, and this morning there was fog all across this bay. It just disappeared now, but it was beautiful. And when I do come out here, it's best to come in the mornings. And wildlife is everywhere. On July 4th weekend, when boats are just screaming across the intercoastal in the morning before all of that craziness, when the water is still and you can't hear anybody else, all you hear is nature. It's really beautiful. And so this water is actually fairly shallow. I apologize if you get seasick. This may not be the sermon for you. But it's just so peaceful to kind of come out here and just sort of float and explore. It reminds me of a time when I had some friends a few years ago. They came to visit Lindsay and I, and we said, okay, let's go to Intercoastal and go fishing. They wanted to fish, and so we took our fishing poles and our nets and we went out there, and it was, we fished for 2 hours, caught nothing. It was absolutely dreadful. And I had told him, there's all kinds of flounder out here, maybe we can cook it tonight, And I had set the bar pretty high, and there was just nothing, of course. And so I said, you know what, I got a kayak. I got a big kayak. A couple of us, let's go over the Masonboro. We may not catch anything, we probably won't, but we'll see the ocean. And so we go over there, and we see the ocean. Then I just, on a whim, I just put my net in the water, right in the shore of the bay here. And when I pulled it back in, there were these two ginormous fish. Well, that's ginormous to me. And two of them right in the net, just swimming right across the shore, and I pull it in, and I was stunned, and my friends, they were stunned as well. And I thought to myself, how did this happen? As a theologian, my immediate thought was the miraculous catch in the Gospels, Luke 5 and the Gospel of John, and I thought about Jesus preaching on the shore of the Sea of Galilee. The voices carry really well across water, as you know, and he got in Peter's boat. He said, Peter, I got to borrow your boat. And Peter, it was morning, sort of like this. Peter and his 3 other future disciples, he was not a disciple yet. They had been fishing all morning, and they were exhausted. Peter, again, not a follower yet, but he was just a middle-class business person. He sort of vaguely knew of Christ, but knew he was special. And so they go in the boat, and Jesus says, Peter, let's go in the deeper waters. And Peter's like, oh man, I've been fishing all night long. I mean, to fish in the Sea of Galilee, you do it at night. You basically work night shifts pretty much every day. And so Peter was exhausted. The Sea of Galilee is not a place where you want to fish in deep waters. It was thought that Peter's job was to be the person that when they cast the nets down, he would go down, he would dive down to unhook the nets when they got stuck in the bottom. And when you go in deep waters in the Sea of Galilee, and having swam in the Sea of Galilee with our friend John at Harbor, the water is beautiful on top, but it's very murky at the bottom. And so it's not water you want to go deep diving in. And so for all those reasons, primarily the exhaustion, Peter didn't want to go with Jesus out to deep water to catch fish he knew weren't there. And so he did this thing that a lot of us do when we don't want to do something for a friend. He said, well, I've been fishing all night. I don't want to do it. Pregnant pause. But I guess if you want me to go, I will go out there with you, and we will fish for fish that aren't there. He was waiting for Christ to say, oh, no, it's okay. But Christ didn't say that. Christ had a plan. Christ had something rolled up his sleeves. And so they go out to the deep water. And of course, you know the story, right? They catch these miraculous fish, and so much the nets are beginning to break. And Peter is in awe. He had been fishing there all night long, and he couldn't believe it. In fact, he feels so much in awe of Christ. He says, I'm not worthy to be in your presence. And while he may have been right, Christ said, no, you're exactly the guy that I want. And so let me ask you, when was the last time you've been surprised by God? When was the last time that God exceeded your expectations and genuinely surprised you? What this story teaches us is that God's miraculous surprises, they happen in the deep water. Christ didn't say, let me take your boat and just fish along the shore here. There's no risk in that. There's no danger in that. There's no having to muster yourself up and muster your spirit up to go out into deeper waters. That takes some courage. It takes some energy and some passion. But that inevitably is where the miracles are. If your life feels a little bit dormant right now, if it feels a little bit empty, if you feel like your faith is low, let me ask you this. When was the last time you've been into deep water? When was the last time you, on faith, that you went out somewhere with God and did something on faith? For you, that could mean diving into a ministry. It could mean leading a ministry. It could mean taking an idea or a passion that you had for a ministry and turning it into something incredible. With all of the racial reconciliation we're trying to do right now as Christians, it could mean speaking your beliefs. It could mean going to a protest. It could mean reaching out to a friend who is different from you and making peace. Those are deep waters, very deep waters. And so I think it's important to ask yourself, when was the last time you've been in deep waters with your faith? Churches, sometimes they wonder, why aren't we experiencing God's abundance? A good question to ask would be, when was the last time as a church you've been in deep waters? If you're watching this and you're not a part of Harbor, you may be a part of a small church and you've got all the excuses, right? Like, people don't come to church anymore. People don't, they're busy on Sundays, kids' schedules on Sundays. But let me ask you, people are inspired by those who go to deep waters. When was the last time you've been into deep waters? Churches have this terrible habit of talking themselves out of going and taking a risk of going into deep waters. They wrap themselves up in red tape. They worry about what the broader membership will think. They worry about offending big givers, and then they end up just staying in the shallow part of the bay, like this water here, which is only a foot or two deep. And they never really go out with Jesus into deep waters, and so they don't experience God's abundance. The most fruitful parts of my ministry have always been when I, on faith, went out into deep waters. When I said, okay, God, I don't know what's going to happen out there, but I know that you can do anything. I know that you can conquer all, even some fish. And so I travel out there and I see what God has in store. Wouldn't it be great for the end of this sermon if like a fish jumped in my boat? Wouldn't that be amazing? It's not going to happen. There are fish jumping everywhere, but that would be pretty tough to do. I will say this, that a fish may not jump in your boat today, but in time, if you trust God and you follow the nudgings of the Holy Spirit and you follow the plan that God has for you, that may call you into very deep and very scary waters, you will experience the abundance of God. It may not be what you expect. It may not be in your time frame, but you will experience the abundance of God if you go into those waters. Thanks be to God.